Should we like look this way or?
No. Each other, yeah.
Like talking like this.
Go ahead.
Yeah, then you can take the question.
Oh, okay. Yeah, okay. Have you ever received dressing advice from your parents or been made to change outfits before leaving the house? Okay, I have lost count how many times this has happened because where I come from, it's a very patriarchal, sexist society. And so dress codes are considered a very like big thing in order to like protect yourself from harassment or catcalling or whatever stuff like that and similar. And I don't know how many times I've gotten into a fight with my father because of the way I was dressed, and how many times I couldn't leave the house because of the way I was dressed. So it was a pretty big thing for me while growing up, but now thank God I'm free.
I have. Like when I was younger, I always like to go out in pretty shabby clothes, and my parents would be like, "Oh, that's not presentable," or like it's not appropriate for this event. You should wear something else, that kind of thing.
Like going to the restaurant or going to a party, I wouldn't wear a dress or wear makeup. So my mom would be like, "Oh, you should like wear something." Or whenever I would do it by myself,
right,
she'll be like, "Oh, you wore makeup, like it's like you're actually wearing makeup, it's good." But for my sister, she's much more like girly than I am. So when she wears like V-necks or pretty like short skirts, my mom would be like, "No, that's too much." So you know, like have to be in between.
Don't really know where.
Yeah.
Like in retrospect, do you think like your dad was right to put that pressure on you, or do you think a lot of time it was more just like out of the way he grew up that he kind of imposed this on you?
It's definitely the way he grew up. I wouldn't say my father is a feminist father. So he basically was usually telling me that, oh, if you dress like that, you're basically... He didn't literally say asking for it, but he like elaborated towards it. So he really has this belief ingrained in him, and like he's 60 years old, like I'm not gonna like change his mindset or whatever. But at least I know that there has nothing to do with it and stuff like that. But in Albania, you just have to live with it.
Yeah, so I've never had that happen to me.
Congratulations.
I think it's... I mean, obviously the fact that I'm a guy definitely plays a role in that, but also I think, like, especially living in Hong Kong, it's like, it's not really something... I mean, obviously there are still certain limits that, especially with girls, that, you know, their parents still tend to be like, okay, you can't wear this and all that. But it's relatively more liberal in that sense, I think, largely due to the fact that just generally speaking the risk tends to be lower. But in my own experience, I've never obviously experienced anything like that. But yeah, I mean, I don't have much to say about that.
Have you ever been told not to act too boyish or girly?
Yes, I was, by my mother.
Okay.
Because I guess like ever since I was a child, my sister and I kind of act boyish, in the sense like we like doing sports, and I mean like even now I don't wear makeup that much, I don't wear heels, like those kind of things that are like considered being girly.
Right.
And I don't know, I like being like comfortable in my clothes, and I'm not super like distinguished or whatever. So my mom kind of tells me that I'm not girly enough sometimes.
I don't think my parents have ever mentioned it, never heard it from any of my friends. And I mean, I think we all kind of grew up like, you know, expecting what is too boyish or too girlish. And, you know, sometimes I steer away from that. I'm not actually sure what it is consciously, but I think the markers are there. But I've never been told explicitly that, oh no, you know, you're too boyish or you're too girlish or something like that.
And do you think it's because you already fit in the boyish pattern that people tell you that you're not too, I don't know, like,
right,
because you already fit in that idea of a boy?
Oh no, definitely.
Yeah.
I think like certain things help, you know, like if you're of a certain height, then people associate that with being, you know, more boyish or masculine, and then that's a good thing, right? So I don't think it's really been like, I've never been called out as either extreme.
Okay.
Like, I've never really had that thing where I was like, I mean, there's always like the, you know, like, don't cry and stuff like that when you're like, like a young boy, but it's never anything big, honestly.
Yeah. Well, to me that's pretty big. Like not like trying to tell you not to cry. It's like that's where the oppression of emotion starts, according to me. Meanwhile, me on the other hand, like growing up, like I usually always tended to like the boyish stuff. Like I always played with cars. I always had more boy friends than girlfriends, and I adored football. Like since I was very, very young, I really, really loved playing football, and I kept watching football with my father. And as soon as I started puberty, I was in puberty, like my mom and both my dad, they were like trying to pull me away from this sport that I really, really loved. And then I've been also like told to not be so girly because I'm a very sensitive kind of person, and especially like I cry a lot, and like whenever I cry a lot or I throw tantrums, as someone would call it, like people are like, oh, you're being such a girl or something like that. And like,
I feel like it's not so much for me when I was saying it wasn't a big thing. For me, it wasn't so much that like it wasn't like there and something we had to deal with, but it's just, I think growing up with the family I did, and even in like the school where I was, it was quite open in the sense that like I rarely felt that I wasn't able to express myself how I wanted to. And I think that's a big thing as well, is, okay, you can have these stereotypes, you know, your boy should do these things, your girl, you should do these things. But I think very much the context in which you kind of experience these stereotypes can very much frame the way you think about them.
Yeah,
and the reason I was never so bothered by them is because I knew that, you know, like, especially with my parents, it's not something that I was ever directly confronted with and would never really be a big issue. So
that's very good.
Yeah.
Have you ever been in a situation where you felt intimidated by people from another gender?
Not anyone in particular, and I wouldn't call it intimidated, but I think sometimes I feel quite uncomfortable if like I walk into a room full of like females, for example, and then sometimes, as it's not intimidation, it's just that, you know, because in secondary school, for example, I used to have like, you know, lots of male friends. I used to hang out around them, so sometimes I'll feel a bit out of my depth, but never intimidation.
Okay. I guess it depends on the context for me. Like if it's in the daylight and I'm just like surrounded by guys, I don't care. But if it's like near the train station, it's like 2 a.m. and there's a lot of shady guys, I don't think it has to do with them being guys. Like if they were shady women, I'll be scared anyways. But yeah, it depends on the people, not the gender, but the people, like the type of people. If they're drunk and like yelling and looking at you in a weird way, I'll be like not even intimidated, but just like scared.
Right. So is it like overwhelmingly guys, or?
I guess, yeah, like proportionally, those people are mostly guys, but yeah. If there were women, it'd be the same.
Right. Okay.
Have you ever been catcalled? How did your experience make you feel, and what was your response to it? Even though it doesn't like touch me directly, it still makes me feel like sad that this is the kind of thing we have to deal with. That like even like this, like girls on a regular routine have to deal with the fact that because of a genetic predisposition, then they will be treated in a certain way that will potentially like make them feel uncomfortable. And it's the kind of thing that it can really happen to anyone at any time. Like it's happened like walking literally down this road like midday that I've been with someone and she gets catcalled, and it's the kind of thing that I think it just makes me really sad.
Okay, I think you already know the answer of whether I've been catcalled or not. Yes, of course. And the saddest thing about it is because the second question is, how did your experience make you feel? I think the saddest part of like being a girl here in love and like having experienced catcall is that now I don't feel anything anymore because it's become such a routine.
It's been normalized for you.
It's not normalized. It's become a routine. Like I just don't feel anything anymore because it's so constant, it's so systematic, and I feel helpless in the sense that I don't know what to do about it. When I'm alone, I of course like just want to avoid it and like keep going on, but sometimes when I've been with my friends, like we've been very, very close to confronting them because it gets like ridiculous at some point. And what was your response to it? Yeah, I just said like I don't even know what to do anymore.
Do you have anything you've always wanted to know about the other gender?
What's one thing that you routinely experience but would never tell your male friends about? Or just like one thing like you regularly experience but like you would never tell your male friends about, but you would maybe tell your female friends about, if there's anything?
Maybe things about boys, but it's not like that I don't want to tell them. It's just that it just doesn't come up in the discussion.
Okay.
And I feel like my male friends are more like they feel more embarrassed to like ask me the kind of questions, and they don't really talk about like other girls in front of me either.
Right.
But it depends on the guys, I guess. Like.
Okay. Do you think like you would want them to talk to you about it more? Would you want to talk about it with your guy friends more?
I mean, like I just want my friends to be comfortable around me, so if they don't feel like talking about that, I'm not gonna force them.
Okay.
But if they want to talk about it, I'll be like, I'll be here to listen to them.
Okay.
Yeah.
Right, interesting.
And what about you then? Like, I'm returning you the question. Do you have anything that you don't talk about with your...
Right. I think sometimes because we do have emotions as well, but you know, sometimes it's like a bit harder to talk about it. And I think maybe because like, we haven't had that experience about being socialized to talk about it a lot more, and like we feel a lot more comfortable with like our male friends because sometimes they are going through the same things as us as well, and like we can kind of reflect that off. But maybe like you sometimes be nice to hear from like somebody else that maybe hasn't been socialized into not talking about certain things. Like that would be nice, I guess.
Okay, I want you to imagine a situation where, for example, a guy is seeing a girl, and for a reason or another, the guy decides to dump her and says it's like he's like, I'm not satisfied with your physical appearance or something like that, right?
Sure.
How do we differentiate being able to have your own preferences in terms of like we each say, like for example, you might like a guy of a certain way, I might like girls of a certain way. How do we differentiate being able to freely express our preferences in the gender we like to being able to not be rude and not make someone insecure?
Okay. I also think that our preferences, physically speaking, are influenced by the society we live in. Like, and I don't think it's only a girl problem. Physically speaking, guys are also very like insecure. Like,
yeah, definitely.
I forgot the word. And anyhow, I think it's I really believe that everything can be fixed through growing up. Like since you're little, like everywhere you go, advertisements, television, media, everything, like they give you a certain model of
what you want,
physical appearance that is the best. And that's how you grow up, and that shapes your preferences as well. Like I admit it, like because like looking at this is so superficial, but like just like looking at models, like I definitely think it had an influence on my type of preferences for boys too. The more you tell children while growing up that that's not the important part, and like tell them more about how the person you choose to be with you in a way, whatever stage of life that might be, should like make you happy, not the appearance or something like that. And also what has started to be done lately with all the different sizes being portrayed in media, which I think is very, very good in the eyes of children growing up. Because personally, I only had one type of model appearing on television while I was growing up. But the children nowadays have started to have more of a diversity in types of shapes and sizes for the different people that are portrayed in media and television. I think that's how you tackle the problem. But like, for example, if you, because you said like how could we express our own preferences by not being rude and stuff. Like if the physical part of it is really bothering you, why are you with that person in the first place? You know what I mean?
Yeah, that's a good point.
So like, I don't know.
Okay, just last thing I want to say about this, because you brought up like different sizes being portrayed in the media. Like, for example, like I can't remember what magazine it was, but a while back there was some like magazine which on the front cover it was like a plus size model, right? And I was thinking to myself when I saw that, how do we differentiate being able to accept one's physical appearance, no matter what it is, from promoting an unhealthy lifestyle? And again, this is not to be rude in any way, right? But there's a certain like degree past which like you look at a person and they're just clinically obese, and you don't want to be disrespectful to these people, and you don't want to make them feel bad, but at the same time you don't want to promote unhealthy living either. Do you know what I mean? Okay,
I don't think you can tell if a person is clinically obese just by looking at them. You know what I mean? Like, there are a lot of people who might look less obese but are less healthy than a person who looks bigger in size. You know what I mean?
That's a good point.
And for example, I still like don't like in the modeling industry and stuff like that in general, because I think there's still like a lot of problems with it. But I just took an example, and beforehand, you know how the models were only skinny, and that is also
that's
very
just as
unhealthy.
Bad.
Yeah,
that is just as bad.
It's just as bad. And maybe because I don't have a lot of information about this topic, so I'm just like brainstorming what comes to my head. Like maybe by including more the different types of people in this industry, there will be a promotion of more of a healthy lifestyle,
like
because people
it will kind of balance. Extremes, you have a balance.
Because I don't think that like unhealthy people like will. I don't know. Actually, it's a very fair point, but I don't know how. I think
it's a very tricky subject. That's why I wanted to bring it up, because it's very difficult to be able to strike that balance between, you don't want to. You want to make everyone feel included, because ideally we would want for no one to be insecure, but you also you want people to be healthy,
but there's a difference between being insecure and having a health problem. You know what I mean? Of course you can be insecure because of you have a health problem, but if you have a health problem, there's a certain way to tackle it. But if it's insecurity not because of your health but just because of your physical appearance, then you go more towards the social side.
It's not so much of a health thing at that point. Right. All right.
Guys, we need to stop.
Okay.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Okay.